Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday, March 8th. This is my birth month, so I'm feeling extra not give a shitty because I don't really care about birthdays, but it doesn't happen until the end of the month anyway. Welcome to the Hang Up. I'm Dillahunty. You're watching The Line. There's a couple little announcements to make before I get into what my Hang Up actually is this week. One is that Saturday I've agreed to do another debate, and yes, it's over at Modern Day Debates, but I like the fact that they're coming to me and saying, hey, here's another Muslim that would like to debate you. And on Saturday, would you like to debate, is Islam true? And this week I did something a little bit different, which was I said, I'm definitely interested. I could do this Saturday. Most debates, I don't have to do all that much prep work after, 2 decades of doing live debates all the time on calling shows. But I wanted to be more specific. If you want to do, is Islam true? That's good. And by the way, is Islam is already difficult to say. I feel like I'm fumbling over it all the time. But I wanted to know which specific tenets he felt like defending. And so I got something back with basically 4 points that he felt like he wanted to defend. And I'm not sure yet, but there's a chance that Friday night I will be doing a Cus I Wanna live right here on The Line, where we'll do some debate prep and probably a couple other fun things. We'll see. It depends. More on that a little bit later. Also, as a reminder, the American Atheist National Convention is coming up in Phoenix. Full disclosure, I'm a member of the board of directors for American Atheists. That's April 9th, the Easter weekend. I will not be in attendance because of some conflicts, but there are a lot of good reasons for you to consider attending if you are in Phoenix or can get to the Phoenix area. You can go to atheistsplural.org for more information about that, and to see a list of the speakers. And there's going to be more stuff added to it as well. There's some last minute things that I found out today from Nick Fish might be on the list very soon. So welcome to the Hang Up. And what's my hang up today? Well, am I autistic? Am I somewhere on the spectrum, the ASD, autism spectrum disorder or syndrome disorder or whatever? And it's interesting because it's come up several times. It came up not the earliest, probably after Jimmy got diagnosed, and then Jimmy started seeing things in me that reflect things in him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you should get tested. You're absolutely." And the thing is, I talked to some other people around me, and they're like, "Yeah, it's certainly possible. Seems so." And last week in chat, somebody I was on with Apologia, and they said, hey, would you guys get, I think it was a super chat asking if we would get tested and publish the results. And I noticed that Shannon in chat was like, oh, I'd bet money on Matt or something like that, which was extra fun for me. And so that's what I've actually been hung up on. And this is legitimately a bit of fun and curiosity for me. I'm 53 years old. I'll be 54 at the end of the month. And as a little kid, I went through a battery of tests. I don't know how many IQ tests and aptitude tests and psychological tests I was put through, but it became very annoying. And I got stuck into various gifted and talented programs and things like that, where it basically ostracized me from my friends, and I felt bitter about it, and I didn't want to do work, and I was pretty pissed off and bored for most of the time that I was in school. And I'd have to say that it's highly probable that I am somewhere on some sort of autism spectrum, though I don't see in my daily life some of the problems that my friends who are autistic face, and some of the little peccadillos that they have. I probably have different ones. And I'm going to go through some of those, not knowing whether or not they are, in fact, indicators or symptoms or things. I don't even know the right language to use for any of this, because I've never really spent much time considering. If I am somewhere on the spectrum, it's not been an issue for me as far as I can tell, though I definitely do have those issues that we'll address in a little bit. And so there's a lot of questions here. And one is it worth getting tested? I'm 53, I'll be 54. I don't know what benefit there might be to getting tested. I know some of the benefits. I would like to know for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is I want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible. And of course, this is stuck in my craw to the point like, if I get tested and it came out, positive, what does that mean? If it comes out negative, what does that mean? And so it's something to learn. And so there's a value in knowing that is perhaps beyond the general utility, and provided that it's covered by insurance or will not cost me a bunch of money, I fully expect that I'll get tested at some point. But I'm more interested in some other aspects of this. The public perception of people who are autistic or who have other my apologies to anybody who I'm offending when I say conditions or disorders or mental health, things like that. Part of getting the language right is why I have my guest here today, and expecting people to call in to give their thoughts on this as well. But the public perception of people with mental health issues and disorders is changing, and I think we're slightly getting better, but there's still a lot of baggage that we don't understand, and we misapply. The perception for the longest time that I've been involved with the atheist community is that the atheist community is chock-a-block full of people who are on the spectrum or socially awkward or weird or have various other mental health issues or disorders and everything else. That never surprised me, because to me, the people who don't fit into the normal boxes of society are the ones that are also more likely to either reject religion for good or bad reasons, or to find their way out of religion when religion's primary hook is propaganda and community and togetherness, but in a way that doesn't fit always with how more independent thinkers and lateral thinkers are going to appreciate. And so we're a weird bunch. And yet I look at theists, having debated countless theists on the various shows and in person and on stage, and I see clearly irrationality. There's no denying the fallacies that are presented, the lack of evidence for the proposition, the shifting of the burden of proof, the unfalsifiable positions, all of these things. And I'm not, I've pointed out, I can't count. I've done a video about how religion is not mental illness. It is not in the DSM. By the way, neither is atheism. These things, religion, Christianity and atheism don't exist in the DSM. It is not mental illness. It's not even necessarily the result of mental illness, although it may be compatible with a number of different conditions. And so does having some sort of mental defect, aberration, curiosity, whatever it is, does having that condition mean anything? Between depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, ASD, narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, none of these mean that you're not rational necessarily. And some of them may make you more rational or hyper rational. I'd like to get tested to know. I'd rather not, on the other hand, because the results, whether it comes out positive or negative, could end up being a distraction for the mission that I'm already on. I've spent the last 18 plus years working towards the promotion of skepticism, humanism, and atheism to varying degrees at different times, and atheist normalcy and acceptance, and building those communities so that people aren't just reliant upon a church for that as well. I'm doing this episode tonight, but I'm not going to be turning this show into the Autism Spectrum Awareness Show, no matter what the results are. And I know that that's something that I would be absolutely tempted to do. So I'm going to go through a list of some of the things I've noticed about myself. But before I do, please welcome tonight's guest, who you already all know and love from the Line Network and everywhere else, Shannon Q. Yay!
Hi.
It's so good to see
everybody.
you. Come in smiling. So I'm going to rattle off some issues, and you and I already talked about this a little bit. And then I'm going to shut up and listen to you talk about brain stuff and the psychological stuff and all the things that we're concerned about for a while.
With the caveat that I am not a clinician. I'm not a clinician. So
that's fair.
It would be an informed but not expert opinion.
It's just having an informed opinion versus the clueless dude on this side is the advantage that everybody gets. So one of the things, have no idea which of these are relevant or not relevant. I am an absolutely obsessive learner. When I decide that I want to know something about something, I'm all in. It is like for most of the last year, the amount of content that I have watched and read and studied on reptile genetics, because that's what Art and I are doing with Epigloot Exotics, is staggering. And I could give a lecture with a little bit of prep, probably at a university, on snake genetics and just general genetics of dominant, incomplete dominant, codominant, recessive traits, allelic combinations, and things like that. But I've been that way about everything. Anything that I found I really cared about. I have no idea if I have any of the common conditions like OCD, ADHD. I know I've been tested for lots of things when I was a kid, but that was, 45 years ago. And a lot of things have changed since then. And, like I said, they'd stick me into programs, you're in the advanced learning program or this program, whatever it was. And it just irritated the crap out of me because I didn't get to hang out with my friends anymore. And there was a lot of teasing and bullying like that. I think it's probably still the same, but you never know. It's like once you're out of school, being generally perceived as a intelligent, knowledgeable person tends to be kind of a positive. But when you're hanging out with your friends, it's just a thing it was always, we're going to make fun of the smart kid, or you're the geek, you're the, I didn't even wear glasses at the time. But it was just, absolutely stereotyped. I'm overly pedantic. I have a precision of language that I use, although there are exceptions because I like playing with language. I like having fun with it. Matter of fact, one of the first punishments I ever got was when I discovered spoonerisms. I was jumping around the kitchen, and my mom said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I've got my beat in a fuck it." And she was like, what did you say? And then I got, the lecture, because that was the first time I learned that one of those words was potentially problematic. For me, clarity is king. And a lack of clarity is really, really, really bucket annoying. I did the bucket thing there and nobody laughed. All right. It's very difficult for me to deal with a lack of closure. This has been a huge thing, especially when individuals or organizations have been in a position where there's been some betrayal, and I'm not ever going to fix it. The inability to fix stuff or get to here's the end, where things are just left hanging. That's probably one of the biggest stressors in my life. I'm also I have a strong sense of justice, or a hyper sense of justice. I have a low tolerance for injustice, for unfairness or inequality. And especially for when people are acting entitled, rude, or inconsistent of others. I'm the person who goes out of their way to make sure I'm on time or early, preferably early, so that I'm not inconveniencing other people. And when I run around the world and if I'm driving or I'm in a parking lot and somebody's parked like a jackass, or when people are offering unsolicited advice to me and to others, I'm kind of hyper vigilant on that, and I find it kind of troubling. I know people who will cheat at games with the excuse that, hey, this is just for fun, we're just sitting around, whatever else. And I grew up around some of those people, including my grandmother would cheat at cards frequently. I refuse to cheat at games, even though I easily could with my magician background and get away with it for card games, board games, other stuff. It is a serious violation of what gaming is supposed to be in my head. Like, I used to run the #1 Counter-Strike team on the planet, along with two of my very good friends, and almost everyone we recruited to our team would cheat in the first match, because at the time, when you were dead, you weren't allowed to talk. It was referred to as ghost recon. And so if you died and you told people on your team where you were, that was cheating. Now it's just become part of the game. I play Valorant and stuff now, and it's just people do it all the time. And basically it got to the point over the last 30 years or so, or 25 years, that, hey, we can't do anything to really stop it, so we're just going to allow it. That way the playing field's fair. And I understand that. I don't like it, but that's the new rules, so I'll play with it. Just yesterday, by the way, I ran across a city truck that was being driven around, and they were in a hurry to get to the Wendy's, and they ran a red light, and almost caused a massive pileup and held traffic up for a few minutes, and with everybody honking while they're getting out. And I happened to be pulling into that same Wendy's because I'm a terrible diabetic who desperately wanted a Frosty. And so I noted down the number on the truck, and I was about to call the city and say, here's the number of the truck. And these two jackasses were in such a hurry to get to lunch that they ran a red light. They caused all this problem. The old me would have absolutely called and done that. And I've done something similar even within the last couple of weeks. But as I'm kind of being aware of how I react to certain things, I decided to just let it go. There may be countless other things that I have about how I interact on shows with callers in the same way that people may have, tells in poker that they don't know of. I may not be aware of them, but that's why Shannon's here to let me know, how fucked up am I? How much does it matter? Where can you get tested? What do we need to know that we don't know? Teach me.
You're all fucked up. You're all fucked up. So for starters, I'd say that all of those things in isolation and even several of them in combination are just a normal spectrum of humanity. Right. The one that caught my ear initially was, you described it as, an insatiable desire to learn. That in and of itself, like an appetite for acquiring knowledge, is not something that deviates from normalcy. Normalcy is even probably a word from being neurotypical. People can be very neurotypical and still have an insatiable appetite for knowledge. But getting a fixation can be something that is indicative of being on the autism spectrum. And it sounds like you can be prone to fixations, potentially. A heightened sense of not just fairness, but regulation adherence. Schedule adherence is something that's really, really, really important to a lot of people on the autism spectrum. Like, routine becomes very important, and deviation from routine is something that causes discomfort. I'm not sure how much of that you do or don't have.
I am a procrastinator. I don't need a routine for myself. My obsession is probably more about how my acts impact other people's schedule.
Okay.
I don't want to fuck up anybody else's schedule, but I don't need a schedule for me.
Okay, fair enough. Social interactions. I didn't hear you mention a lot about social interactions, but that can be something that's super indicative. You mentioned a little bit about taking calls and stuff. Do you often engage with people and they react to you in a way that seems like it's a negative reaction, but you can't quite gauge why?
In daily life, out and about, no. Okay.
All right. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not a clinician. You do have some, you do tend to get fixated on things. You are very matter of fact about things. You are sometimes the rules police, which can be indicative. And in some instances, I think there might be interactions where you get a little bit frustrated because people aren't listening or adhering to what you see as the rules of engagement in an interaction.
Yes,
because they're operating on in a different paradigm than you are. And that can become frustrating to you. And I think that might be indicative as well. But like I said, I am just a layperson. These are the reasons that I said I would bet money when somebody said in the chat that between you and Paul, to get back to your point about what's the point of doing it? I think the point of doing it is that it arms you with more information and more tools about yourself.
Right.
More information about yourself and more tools to interact with others in the world at large that otherwise wouldn't have been available to you. And we had this conversation prior. And that's not a bad thing. And I don't think that you need to, nor should anybody feel as though they have to make something like a diagnosis of being in any way neurodivergent even a strong component of your identity. I think a lot of the reason that some people have to do that is because once they receive that label or are affiliated with a label that of neurodivergence of any kind or any sort of mental health disorder, that comes with negative stigmas. So they need to own those labels in order to be able to stand up and fight against those stigmas or get the services that they require. And it's not because, they want to own that label as a huge aspect of their identity. They just, it breeds from necessity, I think, if that makes any sense.
It does. By the way, there's somebody in chat who's known me longer than any of you. And while he doesn't have any expertise in the diagnostic thing, he may have seen a number of things over the years. So Brad, my brother, if I miss an answer to something that Shannon's asking, or if you have input or thoughts on this, because I don't know where he stands. I know my ex-wife thinks that it's likely that I'm somewhere on the spectrum, but I don't know what my brother thinks, because we never really talk, because we don't give a shit. I mean, there's
nor do you have to.
I mean, but it could be fun.
That's a good attitude to have towards it. Some people don't have the liberty of having that attitude, though, right? Like, some people need the diagnosis because they need like affirmative care immediately in order to be able to function and interact. You have like the privilege of that not being a necessity to you, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to know that about yourself one way or the other and avail of those tools and that information. And I am still a little bit puzzled. Brad said he can
diagnose me. So Brad said he could diagnose me. So I told him to go for it, but you continue.
Okay, fair enough. I'm curious about, you mentioned about how people have, like people on the opposite side, like on the theist side of, like, I guess our world that we exist within publicly here, tend to consistently, almost as an apologetic, say, oh, well, atheists are like autistic, and they connect those two things together as though it's like detrimental or a bad thing. It's deleterious. Like, they use it almost as a pejorative.
Constantly, and not just with theism. Yeah. Everything to them, if you're trans, it's mental illness. If it's this, it's mental illness. If it's this, it's mental illness. And I find that not only just absolutely disgusting and vile in the sense of misappropriating it and yes, and adding the stigma to it, but also they're the ones who are advocating for a system that has habitually dismissed actual mental illness and portrayed it as demonic stuff that they need the church to fix. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, yes, that drives me bananas. But I don't know why that would be a demotivator for you to pursue a diagnosis. Is it because
it's not
you? Oh, okay. I got that.
I'm just complaining about it because I'm always going to complain about the bullshit from religion.
Got ya. Okay, cool. Because like, it's not a bad thing. It's just a part of the natural state of the human condition that people are going to be in a diverse spectrum of neuroprocessing. And some people are going to deviate from what's perceived as, the mean part of the distribution. But that's a great thing. The variety in how we interact with each other in the world and perceive things is what makes life phenomenal and interacting phenomenal, in my opinion. So I don't know. I think anybody who does that is a dickhead, really. Anybody who uses any sort of mental health stigmatization as a further pejorative in order to, classify other people or other groups of people as, bad or deficient. I think that just shows more about them than it does the group that they're attempting to malign.
Yeah, it's been kind of frustrating because, obviously you and I both repeatedly corrected people about, religion is mental illness. I've done videos on it. You've done entire shows and had conversations. Yeah. And it's like, and we've talked about it on the other show. We've talked about it here. I think that ties into the things that are my, I don't know, obsessions or peccadillos or whatever else. When I talk about people acting entitled, rude, and inconsiderate to others when they have unsolicited medical advice, that's especially annoying to me. When people have zero expertise in something, decide to give someone else advice that if they act upon it, so many of us are prone to acting on something because it's coming from a perceived authority. This is how religions propagate. If you want to say, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. What's wrong with you is you need Jesus. And it's not just me saying this. It's the Bible saying it. It's God saying it. It's, it's the pastor's going to say it. And when really that may almost certainly has nothing to do with anything that's wrong with them. And every time I hear that, when I hear people who are just so cocksure of their thoughts, that their thoughts have more value than somebody else's, are more right than somebody else's, when it's so obvious to anybody who has the slightest understanding of this, that there's a lot more nuance, a lot more gap, or that they're just flat out wrong. It's like we live in the Dunning-Kruger polluted world, and the people who are most affected are the ones who are going to fucking run their mouth the most and impact other people's lives. And there we are back to my sense of justice. I want to shut them the fuck down. It's very frustrating.
The answer to everything is simultaneously the answer to nothing. And if you give Jesus as the answer and it's the answer to everything, then you're going to have a lot more false positives, because anything that does help you with that issue is going to now be misattributed to that cause, and it gives you no further information. It tells you nothing about what is actually going on, or what a potential solution even could be. It's just a placebo at best. So
it reminds me a little
of like it either.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of the rant that I went on last week, and I have many other times before. If you came across something, I don't care what it is. We talked about it with regard to trans rights or gender issues or whatever else, but it could be anything. If your answer is this other person is suffering some strong delusion or mental health issue or whatever else, how is that relevant to how you're supposed to treat them and what the best course of action is? If the medical experts, if the medical ethicists, if the people who know the most about this have determined that the best course of action is A, B, C, or D, who the hell are you and your friends to go out there on Twitter and suggest that, oh no, they just need to put their big boy or big girl panties on? I mean, I literally was sitting right next to Dawkins. We were talking, we were taking a Q&A at an event, and a question came in about safe spaces at university. And it stuck with me because it was the final question of the night. I knew we were not going to have time to treat this subject clearly. And I knew that I didn't want to end the night with Richard saying something and me going, well, actually, that's a load of shit. And, but he did, he went on I'm not going to do the impression, but he basically said something about they just need to put their big boy and big girl panties on because university is a place that you go to be challenged. And my thinking is, no, university is a place where you go to learn, not to be challenged on your identity, not to be challenged on those values. There's nothing wrong with challenging people on things, but to suggest that the people who were looking, he had the lazy, confused understanding of safe spaces, where it was a place to coddle people rather than a place where people weren't being accosted and bullied and maligned and mistreated. And it's not about putting on your big boy or big girl panties. So it was the tired, it was what you would expect from somebody who hadn't kept up with, better ways to look at social interactions and stuff. And so I didn't get to address it then. I did address it at Seth Andrews' 300th podcast party just a couple months later, because it really bugged me. Here I am sitting on stage with one of the, one of my favorite people at the time, who's been immensely important to scientific issues and somewhat important as well in the atheist community. It's hard to deny the impact that he's had, and he's right about a great many things. And yet he got this thing wrong as the closing thing of the night. And it's like, who am I to end the night on a down note and correct him? And in the future, that will never happen. I don't care if I'm on stage with God himself. If you get it wrong in the last question, I'm going to fucking call you out, even if we run over.
Good. I like that attitude. I also have that problem. I can't let things lie. It gets me into lots of awkward social interactions because well, actually, here's the thing.
But, well, we have a bunch of callers, and some of them are queuing up. We may get back to this at some point, but I appreciate the thoughts on this. I have no idea if I will get around. I will get tested, provided it's covered and not going to run me a fuck ton of money to get tested. Maybe the people who suggested it can just super chat enough money to cover whatever the testing is, and then I'll go to. But I will be fine either way. But I want to make sure we get to callers, because this is the line. Welcome to the hang up here on the line. And by the way, the announcements for today, which I'll announce probably several times before the show is over. Today, we're doing the hang up with myself and the wonderful and brilliant Shannon Q, in case you didn't know. We'll be taking questions not just on this issue about, I don't care. I'm not soliciting callers to call in and tell me whether or not you think I'm somewhere on the spectrum, but about how we deal with and view mental health issues and things like that. And the stigmatizing that goes on that all of us have, where when we hear something like, oh, they're on the spectrum, what goes through your head? Is there some pity? Is there some assumption that there's, that they're broken, that there's something wrong with them, that they're not going to be able to understand you the way you understand them, which could be your problem more than theirs actually anyway. Stuff like that. But if you have other questions, as always, theist callers will be taking priority, and we have a number of different advice things I know will be coming in. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on the line this week. Tomorrow, the Transatlantic Call-In Show, which was normally at 2 p.m. Central, has been moved to 6 p.m. Central. And instead of featuring Josie and Katy, it'll feature Josie and Arden, who's producing right now and whose voice you may hear at some point later. People are like, oh, we want Arden to chime in like Jimmy does. And she can. Trust me, if she ever wants to chime in on my show, she can do it, and not just because she's the producer. Friday, I may be doing an episode of Cus I Wanna with the debate prep for Saturday's debate, which will be taking place at the Modern Day Debates Forum. I'll be debating a Muslim apologist on whether or not Islam is true. And in this case, not only do we kind of define things, but we came up with a list of 4 things specifically that he's going to defend. So there may be some fun Friday night preparing for that. On Saturday, Jimmy may or may not also do a Cus I Wanna. We're still waiting to find out. But on Sunday, it's the Sunday show, the best damn atheist call-in show on the whole planet. It'll be live basically from 3 to 5. Jimmy and I will be on here taking calls as always. Monday's Skeptalk with Aron Ra and Professor Dave. Tuesday's HOSTility, and I'm not quite sure who's on Tuesday's show yet. And next Wednesday's guest right here on the Hang Up will be Dave Warnock. But
Dave.
I just got to spend time with Dave.
I love both those Daves. I'm jealous.
Yeah. Dave and I are both pulled out of Dave and Warnock and I both pulled out of a conference in Canada, and I don't want to be negative about them at all, but we will probably talk about that a little bit, about the how and why, because while we're all in favor of cooperation and charity and raising money, I'd rather I didn't do work to promote a Catholic charity. But if I was, I definitely don't want to be doing work to promote a Catholic charity that opposes medical assistance in dying, death with dignity, principles like that, where you are making medical decisions about what you're going to offer people in your hospice care based on your religious doctrine. Those two things should have nothing to do with each other. If you want to care for people, you fucking care for them.
My God, that's against everything that Dave stands for.
Yeah. Dave pulled out, I pulled out, other people maybe, yeah, but I still think there's plenty of opportunity for a great conference. And none of this is personal. Ed Brayton, who was a good friend of mine, I can't go into it. He had to end his own life a couple of years ago. And his final message was, I have it saved. I can't even read it, but, yeah, let's take some calls, because I don't want to do that. David in Australia, it's his theist kinda, which I find more intriguing even than the subject. But pronouns are he, him. Welcome to the line, David. It says you believe I answered my question disingenuously after the call dropped. So you had tried to call last week on why do atheists support gender issues. So let's start with you asking your question as accurately as you can, and then Shannon and I can answer it genuinely rather than disingenuously.
Yeah, it was a bit of a dirty trick there, brother. But
What was
anyway,
a dirty trick? Did I disconnect you? No. Did I disconnect your phone? No. Shut up and wait till I'm done answering. Wait till I'm done. You don't get to accuse me of a dirty. You don't get to accuse me of a dirty trick. If I tried multiple times, oh my God! All right, let me mute you. Let me mute you so I don't have to listen to your annoying fucking laugh while I'm explaining how you don't get to accuse me of dirty tricks when I tried to take your call multiple times and even reopened phone lines after we had shut them down so that you can call in, and I put you up first today. How dare you suggest that I'm engaged in dirty tricks? I tried to answer your question as best as I could. Now I'm going to do it again. Would you like us to try to answer it, or would you like me to just tell you to piss off? That's your call.
No, okay, look, I spoke to Forrest and wonderful Dave last year because I was sort of right in the middle of wondering what all this religious stuff was about. But I also still had that massive fear of hell and all that sort of stuff. So I got on really well with Forrest because he's a biologist and I'm a herpetologist, which you should know what that is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks.
So,
are you wondering? It's somebody who studies reptiles. I didn't know you were going to quiz me. I thought you were going to get to the point.
I'll get to the point. I'm in third year uni at the moment in Queensland, in Brisbane, and we're really having some problems with these pronouns. We are really having problems. My professors are tearing their hairs out because we got 200 or 300 people in an auditorium, and people get really offended if they don't get their pronouns right. I don't know. I don't know where the answer is. Do you put like a sticker on their forehead or something? Or I just don't understand.
I'm confused, Dave.
Nearly 100 pronouns.
I'm confused, pronouns. David. Because you say that you have an auditorium with 200 to 300 people and there's real problems with pronouns. I've been in auditoriums with 200 to 300 people that were all in the audience. I never had to know or interact with more than a handful of them with regard to pronouns. What are you doing where 200 to 300 people are upset about pronouns?
I'm doing structural engineering and zoology.
So you're saying that the professor is calling on people in the class utilizing incorrect pronouns?
Or
I'm having trouble trying to understand the way that these interactions are going, where a professor would call upon somebody and use a pronoun. Uh-huh.
It doesn't happen all the time, but someone
You said you're having a real serious problem.
Stand
There's
up.
hundreds of pronouns. Are you being hyperbolic?
Oh,
in order to exaggerate the issue?
I mean,
so let's imagine. So you're standing in a room. You're standing in a room with 300 people there. Give me an example of the scenario where pronouns cause a problem.
This woman, which I have to say, asked a question, and because the professor didn't address her as moon self, she spat the dummy, and there was a half an hour of arguing. We lost nearly 45 minutes of the study. So it's little things like that is just starting to.
So you just said, hang on, I'm gonna mute you. Here's what you said that I heard. You said, so there's a woman, which I have to say, which already makes you sound like a smug prick, because why on earth, in my entire life, never have I referred to a woman as something I have to say.
Glad you caught that.
But then you said it resulted in 45 minutes wasted because the professor didn't use her correct pronouns. So the question is, why didn't the professor just use her correct pronouns?
You're also not catching another contradiction there, because the pronouns that David mentioned for being required were moon self, and yet you didn't adopt that. You said woman would be what I have to say. So there's conflicting information in your recounting of the story.
For my safety and state of mind, I'd rather call a guy with a beard and a dress. I'll call him he, she, or they. It's not a problem for me. I don't have trouble with any sort of gay, lesbian, anything. I believe it.
Okay, I've muted you again, and I'm doing this so that we don't talk over each other for clarity. Because what I just heard you say is that for your safety, you would refer to someone with a beard as he, she, or they. I don't understand what you mean, why a beard is relevant.
I said a guy with a beard in a dress.
Okay.
What is
and I'm happy to call.
Why would you say?
Just asking somebody what their pronouns are.
Hang on. Why would you say a guy in a beard with a dress, or with a beard in a dress? What makes you think it's a guy?
Well, he came in on a push bike, and there was a massive bulge in his.
This is being silly.
I've now muted you because David, you're a delusional piece of shit, and you're not telling the truth, or you're telling something that I don't even care about. I asked you, so you have an individual who's bearded, who's wearing a dress, and you presume he's a guy. And when I ask why, A, because he came in on a push bike. I don't know what push bike has to do with gender. B, because he has a bulge in his pants. I don't know what a bulge in someone's pants has to do with gender. Okay? I'm sorry that this is very confusing for you, but the truth of the matter is you don't seem to understand the facts about gender. And rather than spending time on it today, I think it would be a good idea for you to call into the Transatlantic Call-In Show and get a better education on issues related to gender, particularly since Josie will be on tomorrow, and Arden as well, because I'm sitting here annoyed every single time you open your mouth. And when you complain about how 45 minutes were wasted on pronouns during one of your lectures, I don't want to waste 45 minutes of my shows on your ignorance and confusion about pronouns and your assumed bigotry when you start identifying people's gender based on what kind of vehicle they drive and whether or not you saw a bulge in their pants.
John, you don't even know what that person's pronouns were unless you have to interact with them.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Am I back?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Look up Dr. Michelle Cretella.
I don't want to look
president,
up anybody.
President of the American College
I'm sorry,
of Pediatrics.
Dave. I'm sorry, David. I didn't unmute you so that you could give me fucking homework. You're the one that has homework to do. Goodbye, sir. And David is no longer a guest on this show.
He was using an obvious rhetorical strategy, though, where he was, peppering his recountings with the most, what would be perceived as outlandish, like things on the periphery, and then had inconsistencies in his retelling. So I have difficulty believing that any of that was authentic.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't believe that he's at a university where there's 300 people in the audience, and he happened to observe someone with a beard wearing a dress coming in on a push bike, and this was someone he assumes their gender, as if, see, that's the thing is, by and large, there's a normative process where when you meet most people out and about in daily life, you can probably safely assume their gender and their pronouns. Most people, not everybody. But because you can be wrong, it's worthwhile to take that on board. As a matter of fact, Jimmy made fun of a patron who left our, by the way, you can become a patron of the line as well.
You too
and support us that way. But in his exit interview, he made a little hissy fit about pronouns, and also was very upset that we referred to Canadian money as alleged money repeatedly.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, he doesn't think so, and he found it very offensive, and it was very, very difficult for him as well. So then he emailed, and in his email, he included a picture that he took with me when I was touring, I believe in perhaps Montreal. and accused Jimmy of being a liar and a straw man and everything else. And I'm like, am I supposed to agree with you just because you and I took a picture together? He then replied, not at all. It was to show that we met in Montreal and that Jimmy's a big lying sack of shit. So he thinks the picture is proof that Jimmy's a lying sack of shit. Then I said, for clarity, there's no reason to reply. Your anecdote. Oh, he told an anecdote in his thing about, I'm going to spell the word just for clarity so that nobody else has trouble with it. FAG. He told an anecdote where he says, if your friend called you that, you would probably engage in a belly laugh the first time, but then after a while, it's no longer funny. And I'm like, no, your casual use of the F slur and the notion that somebody would consider it a belly laugh, that's what makes you an asshole, not the other thing, not your concern about Canadian money. And his position was that asking everyone for their pronouns is ludicrous. And he's 48 years old and has not been misgendered since puberty. I'm amazed that this individual was ever misgendered, but okay. He said the norm has no business being introduced oneself automatically with their preferred pronouns. So it's people with different standard pronouns' responsibility to let the interlocutors know what their preferred pronouns are. The same way that when you go to a restaurant, it's up to you to advise the restaurant if you have food allergies. And I said, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the waiter, with the wait person coming over to your table and saying, hi, welcome to the restaurant tonight. Does anyone have any food allergies that I need to know about? Not only is there nothing wrong with that,
note them.
That may be a good thing. And so when people call into the show, we say, do you have preferred pronouns? Because we'd like to be respectful of people's pronouns. And if they don't, that's fine. We're not here to argue about what their preferred pronouns were. And I was trying to explain this when he doubled down, because he said, and I'm only going to read you, I'll read the first sentence of this, and you tell me where you think he went. Oh, not at all, because I lived that exact scenario with a black friend of mine. You're right, Shannon. You're absolutely right. He said, we're having a phenomenal time, and another good white friend piped up with a, you're a badass N-word, and the black friend was crying with laughter. And I just wanted to write in, and then a bald eagle came down and hugged all of us, and we ran off. This is the type of thing where people are so concerned about pronouns. You know what pronouns are?
You like legitimately did the I have a black friend argument.
Yes.
While talking about...
Yes.
Okay.
I have a black friend who was okay with me using the N-word, and that's why it's not a big deal for somebody to use the F slur against me.
So he gets to speak for entire groups of people that he doesn't belong to because of some anecdote in his personal interactions, and he doesn't know how that person felt at the time. That person may have been doing a belly laugh because it was an exceptionally uncomfortable situation and they didn't want to bring it up at the time, because then they're going to face social consequences, and that's not fair to them. Like, you have no idea. Like, stuff like that infuriates me. How hard is it to just not be an asshole? And it's even less hard to not get upset at other people for the crime of just not being an asshole. So he's not upset. Nobody's making him do it. He's upset that we're doing it. We're being, like, considerate, and he doesn't want us to. And he doesn't want to be a party to people who would be considerate. That's his argument. Yeah. We should be less considerate to make him more comfortable.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay.
And similarly, for David, I can't believe that outside of intentionally misgendering somebody, prompting an outrage thing, that this wasted 45 minutes. You know what's never happened? I have, in fact, accidentally misgendered people before. I've never done it intentionally. I have done it. I've done it on this show because we get into the habit of going with our assumptions. And so if someone has a voice that sounds more stereotypically masculine, we may run with it. It's one of the reasons why we ask. But I've done it. And you know what I do? Oh, I'm very sorry. I meant she. I meant he. I meant they. Whatever their pronouns are. And that's the end of it. We've never spent 45 minutes on it. I spend more time talking about the people who are whining about how, oh, this pronoun stuff is just so difficult. It's taking over everything. Why on earth? Why can't they just use it? Why can't they make it simple for me? Why? Look, you know what pronouns are? They're a short way to refer to someone, or a way to refer to someone when you don't know their name. Go watch the Schoolhouse Rock on Rufus Xavier Sarsaparilla, and how he found a kangaroo and followed him home, and now it is his, and blah, blah, blah. This is simple stuff. If you are stumbling over the world's adoption of allowing people to say, these are my preferred pronouns, you're fucked. You are not equipped to go out into the world. You shouldn't be teaching at a university. You shouldn't be calling into a show unless it's to say, please help me understand why I am so fucking fragile that someone's preferred pronouns shut down my entire teaching thing for 45 minutes.
Oh, that's not what he was attempting to create a narrative where people who utilize different pronouns than he deems acceptable for them are not just deviant, but are irrational and causing an issue simply by existing and invalidating them. He was creating, that's what he was doing. And that's not what actually happens in real life.
I'm the disingenuous one.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but
yeah,
now we know.
So I want to take this call, and I don't want to go on too long, but I did actually recommend that Julie, who's a friend of the show, listen up today. So Julie from Quincy is pronoun she, her, has some thoughts on whether or not I'm diagnosed or whatever, what the subject was at the beginning. So welcome, Julie. How you doing?
Hey, Matt, what's going on?
I'm doing a show. What's going on there?
Oh, please tell me. Okay, good. It's working. It wasn't working for, okay. Yeah, I did listen to what you said in the beginning, and it was definitely interesting. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And like, it seems that some of the stuff you listed, I feel it feels kind of a stereotype, and it's kind of like Shannon said, some of it is stuff that you'll see, fairly regularly in neurotypical profiles. But what really popped out at me from what you said is how you need closure. I totally relate to that. I hate it when people can't be direct. I hate it when they're vague. And like, I was actually talking to somebody last week about that. He's this guy that I reconnected with at the beginning of the pandemic that I knew in the late 90s. He was a counselor on the summer program that I was on. And I was talking about something that had happened several months ago that really hit me pretty hard. And we got into the topic of like how we on the spectrum tend to fixate. And he said like, I can bet that, he said, you have a propensity to hyper-focus and just dissect things. And I said, well, yeah, but what specifically are you talking about? That could apply to any number of things. Like, for example, I solved this DNA mystery in my family because I was, pursuing it with this raw intensity and intense focus. But what he was talking about was, he said, I bet you haven't stopped thinking about that incident when it happened. He said, you were like that as a kid. And I said, yeah, it's true. And what I mean, it might be that's just something that's part of the autism profile, but it could also be, I mean, I don't know what your life is like personally. Obviously we haven't met in real life, and I don't know whether you had this experience, but my experience, is especially starting when I was a teenager, is that, I'd be in a situation, I'd think everything had gone well, and then the next day I'd find out everybody was talking about me. And to a lesser extent, that still happens today. And it's just reached a point where I just can't deal with that. I need people to be very direct with me. And And, I always hear, oh, well, it's uncomfortable. Well, tough shit. People who have disabilities need a wheelchair ramp. This is my wheelchair ramp. So that's my thoughts on the issue.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add, and I appreciate you listening to this and calling in. At no point are we even going to remotely attempt to pretend that we're diagnosing me, or that's even possible at this point. But I'm genuinely curious and interested in hearing people, because it's been one of those things where I struggle with some things, and other things I have zero struggle with at all. And it amuses me a little bit and confuses me when I hear people say, oh, well, that's probably this. And none of us should be engaging in armchair diagnoses, even though anybody who's qualified to diagnose somebody else, they already know that they shouldn't be engaged in it in this sort of armchair diagnostics. And that's why I used to laugh so hard, because people would be, I watched some videos, it's like, oh, a Karen got justice or whatever else. And it's like, they'll be like, oh, well, I'm a doctor. Okay. Well, if you are, somebody should take away your medical license, because you're doing things wrong. You're violating your oath. You're making diagnoses when somebody's not your patient. I can't count the number of times that's happened. And including, my ex-wife, reached out to an online therapist and spoke to this person, who then revealed private information to other people about my ex-wife. And I'm like, I don't know how you still have a license, but you definitely shouldn't. But for the people who are people like Julie and others who know a lot more about this, having spent a lot more years either with the issue or being diagnosed, etc., it's good getting feedback, because it helps me, think, oh, okay, which aspects of this do I need to focus on? I don't know Julie, when you were diagnosed, do you remember what the testing involved and how long it took, or anything like that?
Well, here's what's interesting. I'm 42 years old, and in the 80s and 90s, the only people who were getting diagnosed were little boys who talked about trains. So, it just wasn't happening. And then in 2002, I opened this issue of Time magazine, and there's something about autism in there. And I saw this thing in the corner. It said Asperger's syndrome, and I just read it, and my jaw went through the floor, and a light bulb went on over my head. I spent the next year reading about it, and then finally I went to a doctor. And back then, the diagnostic, there wasn't really as much of a procedure as there was today. He says, yeah, I think you're autistic. And then the general consensus among the therapists I've had over the years is that I'm autistic. The one I've been going to for almost 7 years, he said that as soon as I opened my mouth, he knew. He's also very familiar with how it tends to look in cis women. He did say, he actually asked me, have you gotten neuropsychological testing? And I said, no. And he said, well, you should do that. So I went and did that. And what I've learned, and this is really more true for cis women than cis men, is that there'll be a lot of misdiagnosed, and sometimes people just don't listen. They did diagnose me with nonverbal learning disability, which didn't surprise me. There's actually talk as to whether that should be part of the spectrum. But the guy wasn't listening. He said, oh, well, you run meetup groups. You can't be on the spectrum. You're too outgoing. And he also diagnosed me with clinical depression. He said, well, you said you lose interest in your activities when you're having problems. I said, no, I didn't say that. I couldn't say that. I wouldn't have said that. I said, when I having issues, I go to the gym and, work out, so I'm pumping endorphins. And I'm thinking, you moron, you weren't listening. Now, is it possible I could have been wrong for 20-some years? Possibly. If the opportunity ever comes up, maybe I will go back somewhere else for another opinion. But just keep that in mind, that they can be wrong. And also, the reason it's a spectrum is you're going to have people that have this issue or that issue or this strength and that strength. They're not going to have all the stereotypical ones. The whole thing with being good at math and, and computer stuff. That's my neurotypical brother. My dad is a very good engineer. I suck at stuff like that. That's part of nonverbal learning disability. There's also, if you're on the spectrum, you don't make eye contact. Well, I had problems with that when I was a kid and I met adults that I wasn't comfortable with. I outgrew it. The only thing that I've seen that tends to be consistent is our propensity to hyperfixate and have problems reading social cues. So I don't have sensory issues. You hear me, I'm very sarcastic. I'm a smart ass. So are you to some extent. Not everybody on the spectrum is going to be literal. Not everybody's going to have problems with eye contact and so on and so forth. So, definitely if you look into it, just keep in mind that that's why it's a spectrum and it's not a linear spectrum. It's like a scatter plot kind of thing.
Well, I appreciate all that.
And I'm sorry. I'm super curious about something. Can I take just like a little bit of time?
Yeah, go for it.
I've been like sitting on my hands because you mentioned, Julie, that part of it was like with the closure thing, that you've had interactions with people and then thought everything went well. And then the next day you would find out that like they were talking behind your back about you. Part of me is kind of curious, and I wonder what both of you might think about this. As I was listening, it seems as though social interactions for people on the spectrum tend to be kind of constructed based on, facts of how social interactions work to a certain degree, as much as they are about cues. So like you can interpret somebody's social cue as, transmittable from like, well, if somebody's smiling, right? Like you read that as happy. But on like a macro level, there's myriad social cues. So if you're getting perceiving all of what you perceive as the accurate social cues for the interaction that you're having, but people are like presenting, like purposefully presenting incorrect social cues in the interaction in order to like either make you comfortable or because they're assholes. If some people might pick up on that, but maybe somebody on the spectrum wouldn't be as apt to pick up on that. And then that would be like the gap that isn't closed, because from your perception, there is no closure because everything was going the way it was supposed to based on the rules of social interaction, but people weren't playing by the rules. That could become confusing because you weren't operating on the correct information. Does that make sense? That's probably very wordy.
It's kind of it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, I know that sometimes when people smile, they're doing it, it's an awkward smile or a shit-eating grin or whatever else. I mean, these were things that, I learned eventually. It was just like a developmental delay. I mean, that's another thing. For some people, it could just be, they never learned this, and for others, it's a developmental delay. The big thing, I think, is you might have seen this video. It's where it's a perception test, and it's a bunch of people throwing a basketball back and forth, and it says you need to count the number of times they threw the basketball.
The gorilla.
So you watch it, and you're like, 15 times, and then they say, well, did you notice the guy in the gorilla suit? Well, it's like in social situations, you're expected to notice both the catching the ball and the guy in the gorilla suit, and if you don't, people think you're not paying attention or you don't care. Part of autism is it's not necessarily that you don't know what these cues mean. It's just that you may not be processing them as readily. That's part of the nonverbal learning disability. And what happens is I actually took one of those tests where it was about like reading people's eyes, and I found that I scored as well as like the average cis guy. In general, cis guys score lower on that, but it's like if I'm talking to, I've heard this over and over again since I was a teenager, like, oh, you're great one-on-one, but in group situations. And it's like, because it's like I'm playing football. It's hard, and sometimes it's overwhelming, and sometimes I think I'm being funny, and people are like, oh my God, she farted in the wrong direction. Instead of saying, hey, could you not fart? Not literal farting, but like, instead of just like taking me aside and saying, hey, look, that really bothered me. Instead, they just pretend that nothing's wrong, and then they go talk that behind my back, and then I'm like kicked out of the group, which happened last October. And it's frustrating. Or if I get like really excited about something, people will say, oh, that's too intense, or you're aggressive. And I think part of it is unconscious bias. I think a lot of these things are tolerated more in guys. I also think the propensity to hyperfixate is tolerated more in guys. Like, you have a 9-year-old boy that won't shut up about dinosaurs, and it's like, okay, whatever. But if it's a girl, people turn their heads, or someone perceived to be a girl.
That's all very insightful. Thank you for, because that makes me curious. I like thinking about how social interactions are processed in different scenarios. So thank you for your insight.
Thanks a lot, Julie. And now it's time for the thing that you've been waiting ages to do.
Okay, well, first of all, Shannon, vagina, and Matt, you're full of shit. My litter box smells better than you. It's perfume compared to you. You smell bad. Go to hell. Jesus is gonna enjoy sending you to hell, and Satan will enjoy torturing you. No. You're done.
Well played. Well played.
And Matt, you're the reason
No, you're done. You don't get to do a no, you're done, and then do an and Matt. Sorry, I'm going to veto that shit. We got a bunch of other callers, and we're going to have some fun. By the way, we'll be reading super chats. I'm going to try to stop the show as I don't want to run too much past 9:00. And it may be the case that Shannon may leave us at 9:00. So if you got your super chats, get them in quickly. I will be starting to read them. But we still got 4 lines of people here waiting in various states of thinky. And so Lisa in Colorado, pronouns are she, her, a deconstructing theist. Welcome to the line. Welcome to the hang up.
Thank you, Matt and Shannon. Just briefly, I started deconstructing from Christianity approximately 2 years ago, and was just reading about everything I could get a hold of. And most of that time, it felt as though I really wasn't getting anywhere. But in the last 2 months or so, boy, did that change. I feel like I've got jet rockets, that kind of momentum going into this deconstruction. I feel like I'm very close to the other side of it. But there are 2 topics that I'm trying to find good reference material on. I have not succeeded in finding them, but I'm hoping you folks might have some recommendations. And specifically, the 2 topics are: how exactly was the Bible actually compiled? And then the other topic is something that Shannon, I'm so glad you're on tonight. This is perfect. It's something you mentioned in an atheist experience video from about 6 months ago. It's listed online as number 26.33. I'm not sure what that means, but in the blurb, in the little clip of that I saw, you mentioned the topic of endogenous retroviruses, and oh boy, would I like to find reference material on that, but I'm running into a brick wall with that. So if you folks have any recommendations, I am all ears.
Go for it.
So for endogenous retroviruses, that's what cinched evolution, like human evolution, for me, 100%. Like, no, I always believed in it, but that's what the thing that I came across when I entered this sphere. Because the funny thing about being a public atheist is that people will challenge you on evolution, even if you already believed in evolution. And the great thing about it is that you get to get yourself, more educated in things like biology. So endogenous retroviruses are like insert viruses that you can see on our genome, that you can see the same mutations caused by that retrovirus in the genome of other species that are like contemporary to us. So we can see that we're part of the same line. Whether a book specifically on endogenous retroviruses, I do not know the answer. Forrest would probably be the best person to ask that. How the Bible is constructed, I could probably recommend a pile of books. I don't know that there's one comprehensive book. Bart Ehrman talks about it a fair bit about how the Bible is constructed? Are you talking specifically New Testament or Old Testament too? Because that matters. It's different.
Actually, I'd be interested in both, if possible.
Okay. Okay, so there's multiple theories about how the Old Testament is constructed. Anything by Joel Baden would be great. That he is a proponent of something called the documentary hypothesis. And the documentary hypothesis states that it's multiple books that were kind of like aggregated together, which is why there's some overlap in story, especially in the Pentateuch. Another person who does good work on how the Old Testament is constructed, name is going to escape me. Sorry, I'll start with Joel Baden. Joel Baden's a good place to start. For the New Testament, I like Bart Ehrman's work.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go for New Testament recommendations.
Yeah, you go ahead.
My favorite book from Bart Ehrman is Lost Christianities, which isn't going to go through quite so much the canonization process as it is the fights that took place over. You had all these various scriptures running around, and eventually we're going to fight it out until somebody's going to win, and these are the ones become popular. And it's the Christianity that we know today is the result of this process a little bit. Years and years ago, and I don't even know if you can still find it online, I gave a lecture for the atheist community of Austin, and there should be a list of resources that I use there specifically about the canonization of New Testament scriptures. So in addition to Bart Ehrman's Lost Christianities, he's also got one called Lost Scriptures, books that didn't make it into the New Testament, which is kind of doing a 30,000, well, man, not a 30,000 foot view, but it's not so much the canonization process as it is the meta process that led to what was even being considered as canon and what was dismissed outright. Those are two of my favorites. I don't have another recommendation off the top of my head.
One, like, if you want one by like even a Christian author, that's a pretty honest historical work. And I wanted to say Paul because that's my boyfriend's name. Peter.
Mhm.
Peter Enns. I can't remember the name of the book, but he wrote a book as well about kind of like the compiling of the New Testament. He is a Christian, but he's an honest historian and biblical scholar. The thing is, like, most biblical scholars tend to be Christians, so they have that bit of bias. But if you find somebody that's in the academy, they're still they're honest, right? Like, they're actually doing good historical work. You don't need to just go look for atheist, agnostic, non-believer works. A lot of that work in the academy is really, really good too.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear Peter's last name. What was that?
Enns. But I believe it's with two N's, like ENNS, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't remember. I mean, it's been probably 16, 17 years since I did that lecture on the biblical canonization. I don't know if it's still linked from that other place that I did stuff or not, but yeah, I would recommend that. Also, websites really good, like earlychristianwritings.com will give you factual information about the various early Christian writings, not so much the canonization process either. Hard to say, actually. I don't think I have another recommendation outside of that.
Yeah, I don't know if there is one book that springs to mind that specifically addresses that subject matter and compiles all of the different, historical work on the topic. I think there's a lot of historical work on the topic, but I don't know if it's all, like, in the way that you're looking for, been compiled into one popular level book that I'm aware of. If it is, I'd be interested in reading it. It would be a cool book to read at the popular level.
yeah.
But even if you're not like looking for just like a specific book, like a lot of research papers that like are published in this field are, if not publicly available, you could easily ask the authors for them. They tend to provide them if you can ask. That's how I got a lot of research back in the day. Is I would just be like, hey, I'd like to read your paper, and they will usually email you a PDF of their paper. So if you find somebody who specializes in that field, you can just kind of focus in on reading their actual academic work or articles on their academic work if you want a primer before you delve deep into the academic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And thank you for all of that info. And I'm wondering, since you mentioned Forrest, is there, do you know of the best way to reach out to him, or is he going to be on a show soon? Because I
Call
would
him
love
Monday.
to get more. I'm sorry?
He's not on Monday.
He's not? I thought he was on with
No,
Professor Dave.
Aron and Professor Dave.
Oh, Aron and Professor Dave. Aron might know about endogenous retrovirus books too. He's pretty big on the evolution stuff. Forrest definitely would. I don't know when Forrest is hosting next, though. Yep. But yeah, he would be the person to ask about endogenous retroviruses. But yeah, there's lots of articles about that for sure. For sure. There's lots of articles. And Erica, who's on this channel sometime, Guts Sick Gibbon, she did a great video on it on her channel. Her channel's called Guts Sick Gibbon. She did a video on endogenous retroviruses, which is phenomenal. And she has all of her resources in the description. So if you find that video, that would probably be a good jumping off point.
Okay, cool. Because I have heard of her, and I've seen some of her. I've seen some of her videos, but I haven't come across that one. So yeah, that may be a great place to go to. Cool.
It's probably way back in the catalog because it's from a few years ago. Yeah.
I was just told that Forrest will be on HOSTility on the 14th.
There you go.
I'm sorry, and what was the name of the show? I didn't catch that.
HOSTility, right here on this network. It is the Tuesday evening show.
Tuesday evening show.
So next Tuesday. Cool.
Yep.
And that man will pile books on your desk that you'll be reading until you die.
Well, that's okay because I am absolutely loving this. So,
awesome.
Fantastic.
Alrighty. Well, I thank you. Thank you for this info, and I wish you both a very good evening.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Good evening to you as well. Always nice when people are looking for references. I just don't always have a good one ready to go. I mean, my bookshelves downstairs are completely full, but I haven't focused on that area of like reading and research. And I did it, and then I didn't need to keep reading about the canonization process. I was already lecturing on it, and now I don't remember the sources that I cited in my lecture, which I should go back and fix. But
I was hoping she was going to say consciousness, because I would have gone Forrest on her. I would have been like, there's this one and this one and this one, because that's what my entire digital library is. It's just books on consciousness for the most part.
This is so strange because I have Emmanuel here in Texas, but there's some weird background noise. The second I put him live, it sounds like
sounds like he's in a fax machine.
Yeah. Emmanuel, are you calling from a fax machine?
No, I just got done watching South Park.
Okay, but that doesn't explain the noise that I'm hearing in the background. But it says here you have 4 evidential proofs of Christ's resurrection, so let's just jump right in.
I can't wait.
Okay, so well, what I think is there are like 4 compelling evidences or proofs that Jesus Christ was resurrected from the dead. So what I would take the most compelling one is the apostles' martyrdom, right? So we have a historical.
Oh, he doesn't know who I live with.
We have a historical evidence that the apostles and some of Christians in the first century actually died for this belief. So I was actually reading. I have read some books regarding church history. And there's like, I'm sorry.
Just list the 4. That's number 1. The apostles were martyred. What are the other 3?
The 2 will be a believer's life with the Holy Spirit. That's kind of like when someone receives Christ, there's like a power from God. So that's so the Spirit bears witness to us, so we know that Jesus resurrected, and we could actually speak in tongues. So,
okay, so hang on. I wanted you to list the 4 things. The first one was that apostles were martyred. The second one, are you saying the second one is speaking in tongues?
Yeah, the power of the Holy Spirit.
No. You don't get to call it the power of the Holy Spirit. Are you saying that the second one is speaking in tongues?
Yes.
Okay. What's the third one?
The third one will be a Paul's conversion to Christianity.
What conversion?
Paul's
Paul, the
conversion
Apostle
to
Paul,
come to
Saul of Tarsus.
Paul converted. Okay.
follower.
And what's the fourth one?
The fourth one will be how the scriptures testify that Jesus resurrected from the dead.
Okay. How the scriptures
The Bible
testify that Jesus resurrected. Cool. I'm going to mute you for a second, and Shannon and I are going to take turns.
Which one do you want to start with? I'm so excited.
I'll start with the
Can
last
I
one.
have glossolalia? Okay.
Yeah. You can do that. I'll start with the last one. Your fourth one is that the scriptures testify that Jesus resurrected. I'm sorry, Emmanuel, but that's not evidence for the proposition. That is the claim itself. The claim itself exists in the book. The book says Jesus rose from the dead. The claim that Jesus rose from the dead cannot be evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. So number 4, I'm just going to delete from the list entirely because that is not evidence for the claim. It is the claim itself. Shannon's now going to do glossolalia.
Okay, so speaking in tongues, glossolalia, that in and of itself isn't evidence of anything. Like it's a misattribution error anyway, even if it was something that happened, to say that it's evidence for a resurrection. Like there is no causal connection. But above and beyond that, glossolalia is actually something that has been proven like again and again from a psychological standpoint through like a large body of research to be not what it is attested to be or attributed to, because glossolalia is speaking in like nonsense syllables, and all language construction all across the world is comprised of 2 components, phonemes and morphemes, and they are the language sounds that have like meaning and also the smallest breakdown components of language sounds. So the smallest breakdown components are the morphemes, and they're like things like ka, t, ch, p, ta, right? And those are different in different languages because people use different sort of like guttural tones in speech in some languages that they don't use in others, and different sorts of inflections in how they form words. But what they have determined is that when people are speaking in tongues, which is called glossolalia, they are only using their native language sounds. So they're just speaking nonsense syllables from their own native language. So if what speaking in tongues is actually supposed to be is the channeling of like a unique unknown language of spirituality, it would stand to reason that when you are doing it, you wouldn't only be using the components of your native language, and it would be consistent across language groups. So if you're somebody who is a Christian engaging in glossolalia behavior in China, and a Christian doing it in the United States, that's an English speaker, you would expect that the language sounds would be similar during glossolalia because you're channeling like a divine language, but they are in fact not only entirely dissimilar, but both of them contain the morphemic constitution of the native language, so which doesn't make any sense. But yes, okay, that's 2. We can cross off 2 for both of those reasons.
I'm going to do the other 2 together at once, and that is that apostles were martyred and Paul converted. Both of those, and by the way, Shannon's completely right in what she said about glossolalia, and even if glossolalia were real and we didn't know how it was, that wouldn't be evidence of a resurrection at all. And she mentioned that at the outset, it has nothing to do with resurrection. So the fact that apostles were martyred or that Paul converted, nobody seriously doubts that things like this happen, but being willing to be martyred and converting is about how confident one is in their belief. It has nothing to do with how true their belief is. Their belief and what they're willing to do on behalf of it is not evidence for the proposition being true. The same is true for people who believe other religions, or who believe the Loch Ness Monster is real, or Bigfoot, demons, fairies, people who believe that there was election fraud in the last election, people who believe that vaccines cause autism, people who think that aliens are abducting them at night or replacing all their stuff. Their belief is about their conviction, and it has no necessary tie to the truth. So there are 4 things there that you think are confirmation of of Christ's resurrection, absolutely none of them have a tie to the resurrection except for the one that is merely just the claim of resurrection. So, have you got anything else other than those for Christ's resurrection?
Could I just respond to that, to the two of those?
Well, you can start by responding to one of them, but sure.
Okay, so I completely
I'm going to interrupt
disagree.
you,
though. Okay, so what I think is Paul's conversion, since he is Jewish and he has a Judaism background, it tells us that Jesus Christ's resurrection.
No, it doesn't, Emmanuel. I'd let you finish. Here, let me answer this question, and then I'll let you finish. Is it possible for a Jew to convert to another religion that they believe is true, and that religion is not true?
Yeah, there is a high possibility.
Okay, so there's a high possibility that a Jew could convert to a religion that isn't true. Therefore, you just countered your own argument. Paul's conversion, no matter how sincerely he believed it, and no matter how convincing you find it, doesn't mean that it's true, because Paul could have converted to Christianity even if Christianity was false, by your own admission.
Well, what I mean by that is I think Christ's resurrection is consistent with the Old Testament.
No, I don't. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Now you're pissing me off, because you said that Paul's conversion is evidence for the resurrection. And then when I got you to acknowledge instantly and was going to give you credit for the fact that Paul's conversion cannot be evidence for Christ's resurrection, now you want to say what I meant by that was it's consistent with the Old Testament. You're a liar. That's not what you meant by that.
No, what I mean
no,
is
sir.
Paul
No,
is
sir. When
Testament.
You say that Paul's conversion is evidence for Christianity, you did not mean that it was consistent with the Old Testament, and you've already admitted that it cannot be confirmation of the resurrection. Do you have anything else?
No. What I mean is
Thanks, goodbye.
Said Paul's conversion.
Nope. I'm not. We have played this game with you week after week after week, and we have sat here and patiently hand walked you through stuff. And you presented 4 things which both of us have heard 100 times before, and none of them were confirmation of Christ's resurrection. I'm not trying to. It would be cruel, Emmanuel, for us to sit here and toy with you like a cat with a cockroach. You do not understand these subjects. I wish. Call me back another day, Emmanuel, and let's set Christianity aside completely, and let's only talk about how we would go about establishing the truth of any claim. Let's make it not about religion. Let's just focus on skepticism applied to a claim. Pick whatever claim you want that has nothing to do with religion. And we'll see if you can get the basics down.
Yeah, because most of that, like, even if I accepted all 4 of the things that he said were true, like they all had their own independent problems, but even let's say if I accepted them whole cloth, that still doesn't make any of them direct evidence for a resurrection, combined or in isolation. That's just evidence that people believed in a resurrection.
Yep.
That's as far as I could get.
Yeah. That's it for the first 2.
We're Christian. Yeah. Right.
Nobody's disputing that.
Where was he when Paul was here? Poor Paul's probably losing his mind somewhere, because he talks about the martyrs all the time. Oh man, Paul would have eaten him alive with the martyrs.
Paul was literally begging for somebody to call in and present something like that.
And he didn't. You missed your chance, bud.
All right. So we got a couple calls left. Oliver in Kentucky, pronouns are he, him, as a teapot agnostic, and has a question. So welcome, Oliver. You are on the hang up on the line.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfectly fine.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Perfectly fine.
So I was wondering, like, if Christianity is like self-refuting, because like they have I'm probably messing this up, but they have the all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-present God. So under that argument, it could probably be argued that there could be no free will. But if I say there's no free will, it's kind of self-refuting because I'd have to have free will to say there's no free will.
Yes.
So I was wondering if this could be an argument that you could actually disprove Christianity
without any
reference to it.
So you wouldn't have to have free will to think there was free will. You wouldn't even have to have free will to believe there's free will. What you're talking about, and let me do this a short way. We don't have to go to the omni-God. You can ask any Christian this. Did God create the universe? They're going to probably say yes. Could God have created a different universe? They're probably going to say yes. If they say no, you're done. Drop it. This is the only God that the only universe that God could have created. So now you're saying, so God created the only universe that could have been created, which already gets problematic when it comes to free will. But if God created this universe and could have created a different universe, then God is the one who made the decisions. God picked the universe in which Shannon and I are atheists instead of an alternate universe where one or both of us are Christians or Hindus or whatever else we could have potentially been. He picked this particular outcome, which that contradicts the notion of free will. But you have to have all components. You have to have a God that created the universe, could have created a different universe with different outcomes, and chose specifically to create this one. That means that everything happened, which is consistent with Christianity. Everything happens according to God's plan. God knows everything's going to happen because he already picked it. But it does mean that there's no concept of free will at all, let alone libertarian free will. That's viable.
Okay, so that's because I'm interested in philosophy, and I'm a teapot agnostic, but I was just like because I was thinking like if I say maybe I misunderstood you, but if I say like there's no free will, like from my perspective that seems, and this is my thinking. I'm thinking that's self-refuting because by saying there's no free will, I'm actually refuting my own position because I'm acting. I don't know.
No. A lack of free will doesn't mean there's no actors. Doesn't mean there's not agency. Doesn't mean there's not will. You can have will, you can be an agent, and you can act. How free it is a separate question. You could essentially, you could have been deterministically programmed to say there is no free will.
Right. No, I don't even get that far. I like the when you're talking about the triomni God, I don't even like the fact that creation took place at all is my sticking point with that definition of God. Because if a God is, wholly perfect and self-sustaining in his own existence, then he would have no inclination towards creation unless he had a desire. And if he was wholly perfect and self-sustaining, he would not be capable of having a desire. So there would be no desire to create. And then the universe would never exist.
And also,
there would be no universe with that God.
If there was some compulsion that Shannon and I would have overlooked in that, what's the compulsion to create a flawed universe? How does perfection create imperfection? So there's lots of different little things here. So yes, depending on the particular model of Christianity, it may in fact be self-refuting. This is why Christians are just vague enough in their apologetics. And when you push far enough, you'll get to, well, God understands it, and we may be able to understand it when we're in heaven.
Yeah. Or they'll say, well, how do you explain how the universe started then? Because if you can't explain it, then that means God exists. Because apparently that's not an answer.
Like, you can do that with anything. You can do that with like marshmallows, You can do that with, Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question. I've just been thinking about that. Sure. I really appreciate it. I really look up to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver.
Oh, no problem.
Have a good evening.
Chat with you.
You too.
All right. So, here we go. We have Nema, I think it's Nema, maybe Nema, in Bellingham. Pronouns are he, him. So welcome. How are you?
Good afternoon, Matt. Good afternoon, Shannon. It's my honor to talk to both of you. And I would like to start with congratulating to all the women out there. It's International Women's Day.
Thanks. We've been working hard.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Iran. I was born and raised in Iran. And as you probably know, Iran is an Islamic state. It's a state based on theocracy. Although nobody exactly knows that majority of Iranian people are Muslims, because as far as I know, many people have become atheist, agnostic. Many Muslim people have converted Christianity or other religions. But today I'm calling because I've occasionally seen some people call to your show and claim that Islam is a religion of peace. I don't see it that way. I kind of find it preposterous. And I was going to mention two examples in Quran, which is the uh, book of Prophet Muhammad. One is chapter 4, verse 34. And by the way, for all those people, non-Muslims out there, you don't have to have a copy of Quran. You can easily Google it. It's chapter 4, verse 34. Quote, men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from them whom you fear arrogance, first advise them. Then, if they persist, forsake them in bed. And finally, beat them up. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. End quote. So this is your beloved religion that you claim is a peaceful religion. In Islam, you're allowed to take control of your women and beat them up if they do not obey you or if they do not want to obey you. And my second example is chapter 5, verse 35. Quote, indeed, the penalty for those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and spread mischief in the land is death, crucifixion, cutting off their hands and feet on opposite sides, or exile from the land. This penalty is a disgrace for them in this world, and they will suffer a tremendous punishment in the hereafter. End quote. So this is your beloved religion. It boggles me when I see so many people, Muslims, Christians, Jewish people, many other religions, don't want to bother reading their scripture. Read your Quran. If you claim you're a Muslim out there, please, I'm not asking you to become atheist. Just read that. I don't think I'm asking for too much.
Nema, I've got to interrupt because so first of all, there's
sure.
The line is absolutely terrible, and it's difficult for people to understand what you're saying. I am debating a Muslim this weekend, and so Surah 434 was already on my list of things to potentially bring up. I don't think I would bring up 533 because it begins with those who wage war upon Allah and His Messenger. That can so easily be interpreted as if Islam and Muslims and Islamists are attacked, then you're justified in killing or crucifying them. I think it's pretty vile, but I don't plan to bring that one up on Saturday because there is the notion of a right of self-defense and things like that that weakens it. I have a problem with it, but it weakens it. But yeah, 434, where it's basically like if your women are disobedient, counsel them and then stop having sex with them and then beat them. That's a big problem. And it'll be interesting to hear what and how my opponent handles that. I appreciate the information, but I need maybe if I take calls during the Cus I Wanna on Friday night, if you can get a slightly better phone line where I can understand you can call in and help me do some debate prep in preparation for Saturday. But I'm going to put an end to the call here today.
And my prediction is
Alrighty,
a bunch of misogynistic bullshit.
Thank you, Nema.
Yeah.
And your thought was
you
what?
can't defend that. My prediction is a bunch of misogynistic bullshit about, how women are complimentary and, really like, or the time context, like the same that people do with the Old Testament arguments in slavery. Well, at the time, really, in society, it was different. But yeah, no, misogynistic bullshit's my prediction. Well, actually, women in a relationship, they benefit from that. You gotta keep the bitches in line, Matt.
I was going to move on, but because we got one final call here, David Maryland, you are live on the Hang Up on the Line. Welcome to the show.
Sweet. I have a few questions. I guess I'll just do my first one.
The first one would be great.
Because
we may not get to more than that.
Yeah. So my brother is an atheist who says, he told me this morning, that he wants to convert to Catholicism for his social well-being. Basically, he thinks like a lot of Catholics in the South are like very nice and cordial, and he's very picky about, I think he has social anxiety, but he said, I'll never convert. I'll never believe that a God exists, but I only have one life, and I want to be around people that are really nice. And I wanted to say, like, but you're like sort of risking your intellectual health because you're being exposed to sort of like non-rational thinking, I guess like he would be polluting his heuristics regarding just
will these people not interact with him unless he goes to church with them? I guess I'm confused as why he feels the need to convert.
So first of all, you're not describing someone who's going to convert. You're describing someone who wants to pretend that they're Catholic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So do you not think there's tons of people in the Catholic Church right now who are pretending to be Catholic?
I don't know. There probably are.
Yeah. And if you go to the Clergy Project, you'll find that there's plenty of people preaching in many religions, not just Catholicism, but in Protestantism as well, who are also non-believers. So it's entirely possible to fake it. And many people do, and they do it because they don't want to be in a position where they're the outcast, where they're the ones that are conflicted. And while it's very easy to look at them and just say, well, you're just being cowardly or whatever else, the fact of the matter is not everybody's in a position where either their job or their family situation would allow them to be openly atheistic, because we haven't yet created a world where that's a perfectly safe thing to be. In many places, it's perfectly safe. But over the years, a couple decades of doing this, I've heard from kids who've been thrown out by their parents, people who've been run out of town, not necessarily on a rail as they would have 100 and some odd years ago, but who basically, because they were openly atheistic, you can't keep living in this area without harassment or everything else. So while your brother may be attending a church that he doesn't believe in, he'll be there with a bunch of other people. Maybe if we can set up a secret website where people can say, I'm actually an atheist, but I go to this church, then people at every single, oh my God, this is brilliant. I'm just already in love with this. Just like the Clergy Project. You have every church in America listed, every single church, and each church has their own forum where you can go anonymously and say, I attend this church and I do not believe. And then you can interact there. And when there's enough people, like if the Sunday attendance at your church is 42 and there's 12 people on the website who are willing to say, I go to this church and I don't believe, maybe you guys could meet up and do something better with your time and be supportive of each other. Not you, but your brother and them. This needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And about like when your objection to he's going to be exposing himself to poor ideas, I don't know that that's a valid objection just generally, because I mean, look at people like Matt and I, for example. Matt and I spend all day, every day, actively conversing about religion with religious people. Well, I mean, we're not pretending to believe, but I don't think that anything about that has, if anything, it's just more firmly entrenched me that I made the right decision and armed me with more information that, you know, I'm pretty firm on where I stand. So I don't know that that's the case either. But what's upsetting is that we've created a system as a society where people would be ostracized because they don't belong to a specific type of belief tribe. And that they would feel that it was a necessity to adhere to or conform to that belief tribe in order to be able to get the appropriate amount of social interaction in the area where they live. Like, that's a problem that could be addressed. But I mean, if that's what he feels like he has to do, I wouldn't, throw myself on a sword to try and stop him. I would, support him and try to guide him towards creating social interactions that aren't contingent on perpetuating falsities about, who you are and what you believe in order to maintain them. I'd want more authentic ones.
My brother just chimed in chat and said, please tell Dave that being a brother, best thing you can do is to love and support their decision and encourage them to be themselves, which we've done for each other.
Good advice.
And on that note, Dave, I got to let you go. I'm running out of time and I got to get through the super chats, but best of luck. If your brother starts going down a dangerous path, by all means, please call back. Maybe we can find a way to interact with him. But there's a lot of people who are just, let me take the easy way. I'm tired of fighting. I don't want to fight about this. I don't want to be ostracized. I'll go to church, damn it. And for now, some of them may need to.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Jimmy, if you're listening, go suck a poop.
Go suck a poop. That's way worse or way different from go fuck yourself. Anyway, thanks. And a huge thank you to Alex for screening calls tonight. We appreciate it, as we appreciate the moderators. I will make the announcements one last time here before we start cranking through super chats. Tomorrow, the Transatlantic Call-In Show will begin at 6 p.m. Central instead of 2 p.m. Central, and will feature Arden and Josie, and it's going to be awesome. Because they're awesome. How could it not be? Friday, I might be doing a Cus I Wanna with a little debate prep. We'll see, as I'm debating a Muslim on whether or not Islam is true on Saturday. Also on Saturday, Jimmy may or may not be doing a Cus I Wanna, so keep your eye out. You'll get notifications, but you'll only get those notifications if you subscribe and click the little bell. Also, we're still under the 666 likes that we strive to get every show. So if you haven't clicked like, I hadn't clicked like either. Boom, I was number 490. Which number were you? Let's see if we can get somebody to get that up to 666. On Sunday, the Sunday show will be me and Jimmy. On Monday, Skeptalk will be Aron Ra and Professor Dave. On Tuesday, on HOSTility, Forrest will be there for HOSTility. And oh my gosh, I missed Jimmy's message about... Boom. With a doctor. I didn't have a name at all. I was like, I don't remember the name because there's not a name. And then next week, on the Hang Up, it'll be Dave Warnock, and we'll be talking about his Dying Without Loud, what else he's got coming up, the great fun we've had together, and probably a little bit more about conferences and stuff like that. That's all your announcements. Now we're going to do some super chats, and I think Shannon should go first and read the super chat that started from some jackass.
Some jerk face. Something about tonight's show seems extra awesome. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, I'll say it did seem extra awesome
different.
until that message came in, and then that ruined it.
Yeah, derailed the whole thing. It was going great.
But
can't put my finger on it. Strange.
Thanks, boss.
Strange thing.
Oh, I've got my list.
Uh-oh.
Boom, boom, boom. I keep forgetting. Since Arden's producing,
what's going on?
I have complete control of this. 999 from Daniel Parton. The second says, I agree. I agree too. Thank you, Daniel. Much appreciated.
Are we alternating? Is that what's happening?
Yeah,
Does that mean
you're
it's
up.
my turn? Okay. Greg Markowski for $19.99. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for mentioning the other day the amount of online content you watch. I love every show on the line and other YouTube channels, but it's too much. I have to prioritize, but the hang up is an important investment for me. Awesome.
And it's important for me too. And I really appreciate it. Thank you, Greg. And it does not go in. The people whose names I recognize as constant contributors here, I mean, it's just quick and easy. I love it. Look, this one's awesome. Look, $10 from Linda Pendleton. Thank you so much. And made it easy for me to move on to the next one as well.
From $10 from James Call. No, you're done. Now that's closure.
That is closure. It's probably how I got started on that phrase in the first place. $20 of alleged money from Heisenberg. Morning, guys. So there are quite a few brilliant people in history who had some sort of autism. However, if you do get tested, Matt, you run the risk of your opponents using a stigma against you. Yeah, and this is something we actually discussed. I'm not as afraid of that as I was at first, because we already know that there's no argument they can make that would suggest whether I am or am not autistic in any way demonstrates a flaw in my argument, or that I'm incorrect in pointing out the flaws in their argument or arguments. And because of that, it may add a slight hurdle on occasion, but not enough to really bother me. I'm more interested in the truth and the information that comes from it. So we'll see.
It would be a demonstration of their character as well, and also their abject misunderstanding of what autism even is and what it means for people's reasoning skills, because you can hyper focus your reasoning skills to a degree that's, like a much higher aptitude than a neurotypical person would have. So if anything, even if they're going for the high stereotypical version of their perception of autism, it would counter their own objection, because they would just be saying, you're way too reasonable and logical. It's silly. It's stupid.
How dare you be so fucking right?
Right. Exactly. You're right, but you're right by using a stigma that I want to be able to weaponize against you because I'm the best. Christian love's so cool, right? Like, whatever. Shut up.
This one's yours.
Oh, okay. From Larry Fishman. Matt, I'm sorry I challenged your self-perception. I just couldn't get over how much you sounded like myself. I was diagnosed at 22 after a lifetime of social and sensory trauma. I'm still trying to build a normal life at 34. Oh, Larry, I hope that you're well on the road. Thank you for
Larry is evidently the super chat that prompted this, but not just Larry. I mean, because the same thing basically happened with Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, oh, I see all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe it's just because now you've got a hammer and everything looks like a nail. But
could be.
Another alleged $20 from Heisenberg. So, Shannon, would you say there are some theists who absolutely suffer from an over-imagination?
I would say that there's lots of humans that do.
Yeah.
In general, I think when people send super chats like this or ask questions like this, they're attempting to make an inference towards, people being like unreasonable in their beliefs because they have this, propensity towards like fantastical thinking, and that is an abnormal trait to have.
Yeah.
And I don't like to make those types of attributions. One, because they're inaccurate, and two, because they're not helpful.
Yep. There are lots of humans who suffer from an overactive imagination. There are others who don't suffer from it and still have an overactive imagination and enjoy it and create all kinds of things. And some of them wind up theists and some of them wind up non-theists. But
yeah.
Another alleged $10 from Hank says, stuff it, I'm getting tested. OCD traits, ADD and executive dysfunction, schedule anxiety, rules policing, plus my 12-year-old kid is ASD, and other families are similar. Cover me. I'm going in. Fergal, burgle, manergal, burgle. Good for you, Hank says. I'm glad even if I don't end up getting tested, the fact, oh, wow, I saw my brain misread the next one as I was getting ready to click on it. But the fact that we're able to bring attention to some issues and maybe make people think about some things, it's one of my favorite things about the Hang Up. On the Sunday show, we'll go religion most of the time, but we spend a lot of time here on politics and whatever it is that caught my attention this week. This show, to whatever extent I'm on the spectrum, or this show is my attention deficit on display. Whatever or that's not the right one, but my OCD on display, I guess, even if I don't have it, is whatever I've been obsessed about for the last week, in addition to my other obsessions. That's what you get, which is how we're going to end up doing shows about snake breeding, shows about autism. I can't tell you. One of these days, I'm going to come in with a topic that I've just been reading and watching and studying on for 3 days straight, and none of you are going to know what the fuck I'm talking about or how we got down this road, and I'm just going to giggle.
Right. Meet Matthew. Dear caller David, the Southern Poverty Law Center lists the American College of Pediatricians as a fringe anti-LGBT hate group. I caught that too. Yes.
Yeah.
But didn't have the opportunity to say it. Hate group that masquerades as the premier U.S. association. Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I went out. Look it up. We're not going to be plugging any. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was in the process of shutting him down, so I didn't hear him list everything about the American College of Pediatricians. I was like, nope, we're done.
Yes, but good catch. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
And good for calling it out because it's worth mentioning.
Thank you so much. $10 from Jeff Edwards, Shannon and Matt, and Arden, Jimmy, Paul, Gia, Aron, Forrest, on and on. Your shows have been so helpful during my transition out of empty faith. Thank you more than you know, but go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I mean, that's what Jimmy likes. So thank you so much. And I'm genuinely glad it's been useful. I've spent, 18 years and some change. It'll be 19 years next week. 19 years next week. I've been doing live shows almost weekly, sometimes multiple times per week. Occasionally I have had a vacation or a period of time where I take a week or two off, but for almost 19 years. And every time someone says that it's helped them, every one of them has made the whole thing worth it. So thank you.
100%. Totally agree. Logical Harm for $10. Thank you, Logical Harm. Shannon, to blend, sometimes I wonder how much I have compromised myself. Any advice to just recapture what I should... Oh, sorry. I'm dyslexic, so sometimes it takes me a minute to recompile in my head. Yep. Shannon, to blend, sometimes I wonder how much I have compromised myself. Any advice to just recapture what I would be if I were not atypical and people were more like me? Thanks. I don't think that you should have to blend. That's the way that I see it. Like, I think social masking is something that people do because the work of consistently explaining yourself is difficult and exhausting. And so sometimes we can wear ourselves out acting the way that we believe is expected of us in order to be able to have social interactions at all, which is almost as effortful, but makes other people less uncomfortable. So we get to continue having those interactions because we don't have to worry about the repercussions of making other people uncomfortable. So my advice, I guess, would be find people you can be yourself around and use those people as a reprieve from the rest of broader society when you have to have those interactions. My advice to somebody who isn't neurotypical will never be change yourself. Something that could be helpful maybe is as you're finding people that you are comfortable and starting to form relationships around, be able to be open with them about who you are and maybe even be honest with them about some things that you may do that are masking behaviors, and say, that when you see me doing this thing, that might be a sign that I'm uncomfortable. Is that a situation where maybe you and I could go take a walk so that I can release that mask and be myself and have a more open conversation, and find those people who you can use as support systems in difficult social situations, and that will allow you to be more yourself. And the more people like that you find, the more they can help also, if they're good people, facilitate your better integration into broader social groups. And the more people we educate like that, the more people who are willing to help be understanding facilitators of that type of social interaction, the better chance there will be that we won't be so dismissive and non-understanding of people whose social interaction styles differ from what we've been conditioned to perceive as normal.
So we're past 9 o'clock.
Sorry.
Are you sticking around?
How many more do we have? I want to make an informed decision. 15. Okay. Let's power through them. We can do it.
15. The only thing that I would add to Shannon's, the only thing I would add to Shannon, the only thing I would add to Shannon's, which is kind of includes, is that the specific language of what I would be if it were not. I no longer spend any time worrying about what I would be like if X hadn't happened, and I spend my time focusing on who I am and who I want to be. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
$11 from Polly Pockets. One of the things I admire about you, Shannon, is your ability to speak your mind and to challenge people in a clear way. Any tips on doing that?
Oh, just become an asshole, just like me. No, sorry. Well, I went to school for a long time and studied like psychology, perceptual cognition, and communication strategy. So I think some of it is maybe even TACIS because I took it on board through higher education. I had to learn patience. I had to learn patience. I had to learn not to interject to correct constantly because I always wanted to be like, no, blah, blah, blah. So that I could make sure that I was, a lesson that I learned a long time ago was that when I was doing that, I was jumping on people before they even had a chance to finish what they were attempting to transmit to me. And sometimes I was correcting them on things that they weren't actually saying because I was hearing what I thought they were going to say, not what they were actually saying. Like I was almost like,
and we both did that tonight.
Yeah, I still do it.
Did that tonight, but we got it right.
Yeah. We've done this so many times though too. Like you hear the same thing so many times the same exact way. It's even harder when that's the case, right?
Sometimes when I do it,
I was auto-completing people's arguments. I was like future projecting.
Sometimes when I do it on the shows, it's because I want to get on to the next point to see if they've got the new thing, the new thing that comes after that. Because if it's just the old thing again, we got that. We've dealt it.
But. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Exactly. Pardon me. From the Raven 200. What's up, Matt and Shannon? This is probably a dumb question, but of the arguments you two have heard for God, Christian, deistic, etc., what's the most ridiculous? Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Yeah.
That was from me.
Oh,
wow. That's hard.
I always have a hard time with this question when they're asking about what's the most ridiculous or least ridiculous, because in my head, if the argument's fallacious, you're done. Because a fallacious argument, you have no idea whether the conclusion is true or false. You have no way to assess that if it's fallacious in structure. And but that doesn't mean, like something like why is there something rather than nothing is certainly more reasonable than I had a vision and a message directly from the gods about this sort of thing. I can't do a what's the most ridiculous. I will say, of all of the religions that exist right now, Scientology is the most ridiculous and Mormonism is the close second.
Scientology, I think, is the most ridiculous. But I'm kind of with you. Like, I think they're all wrong. Some of them for different reasons. Some people wrap that wrongness up in like really elaborate, silly stories. And I mean, that I guess seems a little bit more ridiculous because they take that belief and then they, put some, bonkers frosting on it. But the core of it is still wrong. Like if you take all of that, artifice away, the core of it is still wrong for the reasons that I think the rest of it is wrong. It's just got different window dressing.
Yep. 999 from Torvis Temple. Matt, you ready for Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? No, I didn't even know that was happening. I haven't followed or cared about WrestleMania for, I don't know, a decade and some change. For once, pro
know what's still
wrestling's gotten
happening.
exciting. I'll take your word for it. Shannon Q is such a queen. Shapiro would even fear her and refuse to debate her. I think you're right.
I'd debate him. He doesn't really scare me.
Yeah.
People don't ask to debate me, though. It's strange. They shouldn't. Ever since I talked to Darth Dawkins, now no one will talk to me. It's stupid. Whatever. It's fine. Be afraid. Chickens. Torcus Cardoon. I have to have a couple drinks in me before I can actually watch the show because there are so many cringe callers. You all have greater willpower than myself.
How do you know how many drinks Shannon and I have had before we start?
I'm drinking water, actually. I'm sorry. I'm kind of a loser.
I'm drinking
today.
iced tea, but I was making a joke that maybe we're drunk before we start too.
I can drink a lot before it looks like I'm even drunk, actually.
Thanks, Torcus.
I have a very Irish liver. Look, I'm even wearing my magically fucking delicious Irish shirt today.
There you go. $9.99 from the Raven 200. Seeing the previous wrestling super chat legit reminded me of how hyped I am for WrestleMania. And now I kind of want to watch it, even though I haven't watched in years. I want to see Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens take the tag titles from the Usos. Is it Usos? Is it Usos? I don't even know who that is. I've never heard of any of them. And for a minute there, I thought it said tag titties instead of tag tittles because you put two T's in there. So I was like, is that tag titles or tag titties?
Isn't the WWE just like a soap opera? Only men get half naked and then like grapple with each other.
Yes.
But like, yeah, okay.
It's exactly what it is. But I mean, there's some great moments there, and I'm mildly interested in what happens at WrestleMania. But
okay. Larry Fishman. Also, Paul's position on coffee tables. It's the most ASD thing I've ever heard. I don't think Paul's on the spectrum at all. I think that he is just a minimalist to a degree that's unreasonable. Do you know why this happened? Because when he was on last week, somebody was like, what do you and Paul fight about? And I was like, well, we don't really like get into very many arguments. Like we've had disagreements, but we're pretty good communicators. So we usually like sit down and communicate it out. The only thing that like he and I both have very deviating positions on is I think we need a coffee table and he thinks he needs to put his drinks on the floor so that I can kick them over because coffee tables are the devil. And I don't think we'll ever see eye to eye on that for our whole entire life. So yeah, no, I don't think he has autism. I think he's trying to ruin my life one wet foot at a time. That's what I think.
Oh, it's so good. $10 from John Muir. Do either of you have a favorite atheist song? For example, I love Dear God by XTC. I love Dear God by XTC. I don't know if it's my favorite.
Take Me to Church. Take Me to Church by Hosier.
Is that an atheist song?
I don't know if it's a song. I would say, have you heard Take Me to Church by Hosier?
Many times.
I'll worship like a dog at the shrine of your light. I love it.
But yes, I'm a big fan of Dear God by XTC.
I don't know what that
I think Hand of the Almighty by John R. Butler is way up there, and probably 10 songs by Tim Minchin also up there, especially the Pope song. But
I need to go listen to Tim Minchin. That's the second show I've been on that he's come up. I gotta go get a prize.
Oh my gosh, you haven't? So all
I know
you
who
do,
he is. I just haven't listened to much of his
just listen.
stuff.
Just listen to Storm.
That's what somebody said last week.
Then the Pope song.
Okay.
And then If I Didn't Have You. And after that, you'll be hooked.
Okay. Done. I will do that. Awesome. Okay. I killed
$10.
Earl.
Oh, that's you.
Oh, I thought it was my turn. I thought
It is you. Go ahead.
$10 from I Killed Earl. Thank you, I Killed Earl. And here's $10 since my last one was free. Oh, that's right. Because if you're a member, you get one free super chat. I discovered that the other day. If that's another member benefit, you get one free super chat. I think I don't know if it's forever or a month. Hashtag FBMB. Hashtag not all coffee tables. Yes, everybody. We need to form factions and get flags. I'm
on your side. I've got a coffee table.
Hashtag go fuck yourself, Jimmy. He thinks it'll just accumulate shit.
He's right.
Reasonable because it probably will.
Yes.
But so what? Like sometimes
exactly.
You
My
have
coffee table has accumulated shit.
Right.
Like and hashtag FBMB is Fergalburgle. But
no.
$10 from Della Luna. How many cups of Paul's coffee have you kicked over this week, Shannon?
None this week. I almost he almost knocked over a Coke can the other day though, because he was looking like this, and I was like, "Are you looking for that Coke can that is next to your foot?" Because I swear to God, if I hear that knock over, I'm gonna go drive to IKEA right now, and I'm gonna come back with a fucking coffee table. He's probably in the other room seething right now.
Good.
I win. $10 from Tiashi Kojima for Shannon. Have you ever been in a boat about have you ever been in a boat without a boot to bandy about?
Wow.
Sorry.
Wow. I mean, first of all, it's bad enough that they're basically doing the let me toy with the Canadian, but your dyslexia makes that even harder because
I did.
I would have just read for Shannon. Have you ever been in about a boat without a boot to bandy about? Sorry, but
because I read the first one as boat initially, but it's actually bout, and then I read boat as a boat because the A is so close to it, and then boot. I totally was like, is that bout again? Oh, I did it though. I made it through.
I think they were looking for the. Have you ever been in a boot, a boot, a boot, a boot, a boot, a boot, a boot? You know.
Have you ever been in a boat without a boot
to bandy about? Yeah. I could adopt. You went almost like an Irish accent there as well. Have you ever been in a boat?
I have a maritime accent. Maritime accents and Irish accents are close, and also I'm certified Irish now. I did a DNA test, so eat it.
Well,
I am Irish.
So we're probably related at some point because
no doubt.
My ancestors fled, were Huguenots fleeing religious persecution in France, and they stayed in Ireland for a while, and then they went to Tennessee and formed one of the first Baptist churches that became the Southern Baptist Convention.
Oh, look! Damn, sorry to hear that. All right,
$10 from Diane Upshaw. No, you're done is not closure. Why are you done? That's how pedantic I am. Fair. When I say no, you're done, that's me giving myself closure. The other person, I don't give a fuck if they got closure. When I say they're done, they're fucking done.
All right, Ben T, logic and reason to relax the mind. Thank you.
Fair point.
I'm going to assume you're talking about us.
Could be. It could have been a caller. $10 from Drew Richardson. Matt, would you ever breed a venomous snake? Well, yes, actually, because we have some venomous snakes. It's just that the venomous snakes we have right now are hognose snakes, so they're rear fang venomous and they're harmless to us. But if you're a lizard, you're kind of screwed if they bite you and chew on you. I don't have any plans to breed any hot snakes or any dangerous snakes. Would I ever? Maybe if there was a good reason. I don't have any interest in keeping dangerous snakes. I'm having more fun with the non-dangerous ones. And the older I get, the slower I'm going to get, which means the more likely I am to get bit. But matter of fact, I got bit by one of the womas. We just got another woma arrived today, and 2 more ball pythons. Wow, there's 6 more to go that just came in here. But I got bit by my woma a week or so ago, and she actually left a little piece of tooth in there, and so it took me a couple of days to realize it and get it cleaned out.
$10 from Mark Smith, Matt 1.0 and Shannon. Wonderful show. And for Matt 2.0, go sublate yourself.
Fair. Much appreciated, Mark. $10 from Dante Verona. I can say this since he isn't involved in tonight's episode. I think very highly of Jimmy. He has managed to recruit some of the most vibrant minds together all in one place. Hey, Jimmy, exemplary. Exemplary is a really weird way to spell go fuck yourself.
Maybe he's dyslexic too.
Thank you, Dante.
from Von Wick, $50. Wow, thank you. That's very generous.
That's awesome.
A simple thank you to the host and everyone involved. You all are great. Well, I am. Everybody else is here too, so that's neat.
I think your coffee table disagreement has brought in enough super chats to buy you a coffee table.
I will never have a coffee table. I'll never win that fight.
$10 from Ian Jones. My donation to the Shannon Needs a Coffee Table Fund. There we go. I hadn't even read that one yet, and that's exactly what it is.
I'll make it more art instead. That's what I'll do. Did I ever tell you the story about how I snuck a painting into the house?
Oh.
Put it on the wall, and then he took all the nails. I did. I snuck a painting in. He doesn't like it. It's over his coffee machine, so he gets to see it every morning because I'm a bitch.
I'm a bitch. I'm a mother. I'm a child.
I'm the worst person in the world. You didn't want wall art. And I was like, you know what? I'll just get this little one and put it in the place you have to look at. I know. I'm a bad person. Sorry. Let's go. All right. So let's read. $10 from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Oh, hey. Tim Minchin also wrote the totally underrated Groundhog's Day musical, which is excellent and takes some great shots at woo and religion. I have not heard of that. I got some Tim Minchin research to do.
Yeah, Tim's awesome.
Really?
But start with Storm.
Storm. Okay.
$10 from I Killed Earl. Since my free chat wasn't read, I don't know what that is. I will look into it. My apologies. Most insurance won't cover ASD testing for adults, but getting tested open access to therapists. Excuse me, I got hiccups all of a sudden. Who help me be less irritating and keep a job. #Team Coffee Table. I will see if I can find your free one as well.
I tried to find the free one. The problem is that the super chats on my end have a big super chat label in brackets, and the free one doesn't come with that. So I can look up all of I Killed Earl's messages that they sent today, but it's not clear to me at all which one was the free super chat. So
can everybody watching hear Arden? Because I know that's what some people wanted.
They should be able to hear me right now. I'm coming through the master.
So, yay!
Yeah.
I hope so.
Coming in with helpful information. All right. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. Matt, no, you're done. Shannon, elevate D's nuts cord. Is that supposed to be Discord? Love y'all.
From Jamnik06, thanks so much. And the final, although somebody's going to donate again to make me a liar, the final super chat from tonight's show, getting us 18 minutes over my allotted hardline, comes from Julie. I saved it. $10 from Julie Ezras to the tune of Barbara Ann. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to do it because my brain is halting because all I can get is the chorus of the ba ba ba. So you smoked a lot of grass, gave Matt some sass, straw man to death, so he hung up on your ass. I appreciate that. At some point, my brain will process the entirety of Barbara Ann and do it right. And of course, here's Della Luna making me a liar. So there you go, Shannon.
Hi, Della Luna, $10. Maybe if you kick drinks over on purpose, it'll change Paul's prejudice about coffee too.
There we go.
How invested everybody is in this.
It's so awesome. So that's it. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. Thank you for tolerating my my little excursions into what I think and what I'm hung up on this week. Because this week was not so much me being hung up about me and whether or not I have autism, but the perception that we generally have of these things, the flawed understanding that I have, the flawed understanding the general public does, how these things are weaponized and used against people, how we are doing a poor job of combating religious narratives about mental health and about who we are and how we fit into this world. There's a lot to discover. I love having Shannon. I wish Shannon could be on. I wish Shannon could be on almost, but not almost every week on the Hang Up. And you will be seeing Shannon on Skeptalk and HOSTility and loads of other shows. And I can't wait till we get a chance to do a Sunday show together because it's been a month of Sundays since we did.
Right.
So I want to get her on the Sunday show. But I will say this. Yes.
Sorry, interrupted you with my sing-along.
When we were having a conversation with it, as Arden and I were sitting in the car, I'd already talked to Arden and Jimmy about this because they were around, and of course Paul was there when the message popped up. But when Shannon said that she'd bet on this, I was like, that's the person I most want to talk to right now. And while we were driving, I picked up the phone and I called Shannon. And for the person who did the super chat saying they really appreciate Shannon's, forthright and honesty and everything else, that's exactly why Shannon was the first person I called, and her thoughts and her opinion on this helped form my own rather quickly, to the point where if it's covered or if I can afford it, I will definitely be getting tested. If for no other reason, then I will get to call my friend Shannon again, tell her the results, talk about it and everything else. Thank you so much for doing the show with me tonight. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and for all the super chats. Tune into all the other shows. Remember, the Transatlantic Call-In Show will be starting at 6 p.m. Central tomorrow instead of 2. In the meantime, get hung up on something. It's really fun. We'll see you next week with Dave Warnock.